Hello, and welcome to Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. I'm your host, John Johnson. And one of the things that I'm going to talk about in this particular episode is just the way you are. I know that we get into relationships with people, various individuals, but the thing that keeps us coming back to those relationships is because we feel validated. We feel good. We feel like we want to be with that person. And, that's something that's what friendships are about. It's about you being accepted for who you are. But when you slide into that romantic style relationship, then obviously it's about pleasing both partners, and it's not about yourself. It's not just about being selfish. I mean, certainly friendships can teach you something about the give and take nature of relationships. But, the romantic thing, as I've stated, romance is different. It's definitely different. And when you're friends, basically you're friends around the subjects that you can agree upon. If you like bowling, you go bowling. If you like baseball, you like baseball. If you like playing cards, you like cards. And your lives aren't intertwined in the way that a romance is. The emotional spectrum is just in a different zone. Having been there, I understand that. And those of you that have had the experience, you definitely understand that. But so if it's never been put into words for you, it's really just that. Friendships, the relationships, the things that you're friends around are simply that. It's not that your lives are so interdependent as it would be in a romantic relationship, because then there is the emotional nurturing that comes in the consistency and being with that person on a regular basis, the interdependence. And that's the difference. So, but this podcast is about just the way you are. And I know what it feels like to, when you meet a person and you want to feel like you're good enough to be with that person. It's enough to make you change who you are. Now, there are times that's definitely a good thing. If you've not taken care of yourself very well, and being in love changes that for you, obviously being in love is a good thing. And I'm talking about in the most healthy way. But the just the way you are part has to do with, if you're a person who's pretty well adjusted, and what you're running into is you're running into being rejected just because of who you are, just because as you just walk the streets and being rejected, then you have to understand that you're good just the way you are, and those aren't the people for you. Romantic relationships oftentimes run into this. You meet someone and it seems like things are going well, but then let's say after a few weeks, then things tend to get a little rough. Just to describe it, say maybe the honeymoon phase is starting to kind of wear off here. And what was once okay is now starting to grate on someone's nerves. Well, obviously you would probably examine that a little bit and think, okay, did I do something? But when those things start to happen, it's certainly enough to shake your self-confidence. So what I'm offering is, as a way of looking at this, it's always okay to do a self-check. I think that that's the appropriate thing to do. But sometimes what you may find out is what you're doing is perfectly all right. And you have to learn to accept yourself. Because I can tell you this, when you're going to be with another person, you definitely need to know a lot about yourself, because there are things about in terms of your principles and things that you value, things that you want to talk about, things that you need to be able to learn how to stand your ground and express yourself and explain yourself so that your needs get met also. Because it's not always about you giving up something. It's about what you bring to the table, what they bring to the table, and how you both lift each other up. That's an important dynamic, because relationships can get very stilted. And by that, I mean one person gives and the other person takes. And when those kinds of things happen, obviously you're going to feel used. You're going to feel something is out of balance. At least I hope you do. If you're not in a place where you're really understanding when somebody is taking from you, I hope, maybe your friends might be able to give you a clue. They might be really good at pointing something like that out for you so that you learn, hey, you know what, you're being taken for a ride here. And that's one of the nice things about going around your friends, at least on occasion, that they might be able to give you a little bit of insight. because there are ways in which you can be treated that might not be so nice. You might be accepting of something that you probably shouldn't accept, but that's kind of getting off on a little bit of a tangent, and I can circle back around to that in a minute. But being just the way you are, being well adjusted, having your own mindset, and being able to bring that to the table with another human being and negotiate some of the differences and navigate that is a wonderful thing to be able to do. It takes a lot to be able to do that, and to find somebody who you can do that with, because there are millions of people out there who are great for a short amount of time. But when you're talking about spending hours and hours, years and years with a person, then it's really important to know something about yourself, and then also to be able to grow. And growth is expected. And like I say, it's mutual. I mean, it works for both partners. And as long as there's growth, and it's incremental. We're not climbing mountains in a day. It takes a long time to gain that skill in a relationship, and every partner is different. This is something to also be mindful of. What the experiences that you had in relationships in your teens and your 20s are going to be different from your 30s and beyond, because what's important to you at those periods of life are different. When you're in your 20s, you're beginning to be more independent and learning to live on your own. And when you're in your 30s and 40s, you're expected to be able to be on your own and be self-sufficient. So it requires different things of you. So, and in other words, it's also going to require different things of the relationships with people that you know. And you should expect that. And that level of maturity should also kick in to help you learn something about knowing just the way you are has helped to get you here. And if you're at a comfortable place, then be okay with that, and seek people out who are also okay with that, but who are also willing to support you in whatever areas you want to grow. Because obviously there's that in your life. What are your passions? And that's an area where you can grow. You can be inspired to do that. And I encourage you to look into those things. But it's about being comfortable with the way you are is sort of the foundation for that, you see. Because if you're allowing people into your life who, number one, they take from you, they take your money emotionally, they tend to rob you of your self-esteem because they talk negatively about you and can't find a way to support you in a healthy way, then those aren't the people you want. Because ultimately that damage is going to have to be fixed at some point, whether you do it with them or with another set of friends or on your own, the therapy, self-help, meditation, whatever is your method. Realize when you're in the space of people who are not healthy for you, and being able to turn and walk away. That's a big statement. As I had shared with in another podcast, one of the things that I had to learn in having a disagreement with someone was that sometimes you just can't fix it right then and there, and you have to learn to just turn and walk away and say, we'll deal with this later. That'll be a better time, rather than creating a big upset in the moment and possibly hurting someone else's feelings even worse. Because I certainly have the temperament that I kind of like to pound it out, like to nail it down. But not everybody is like that, and that took a while for me to learn. But again, just the way I am, I had to learn it, and now I'm much better at dealing with that. So now for someone, and I think it's a much more mature approach. So now if someone were to come at me and start yelling and even tell me that I'm a wimp or weak or something, I'm okay with that. I could turn and walk away, because you know what? Dismissing them for being an idiot is probably and not even saying a word, mind you, is probably the loudest statement that I can possibly make. Because yelling at them, that's what they want, because they like that fight. They like that engagement. But being able to turn and say, I'm not going to deal with you. I'm done. And wow, that's powerful. It is powerful. It's where they say silence is golden. Look, I'm going to take a little break, and I'm going to come right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
I'm talking about just the way you are. Now, I'm going to touch on a few reasons why you wouldn't be okay with the way you are. And it could be because you have been bullied as a kid and you've never felt supported at some point, or you've been told that you're worthless. And I'm going to tell you that you are worth something. You are definitely worth something. And if your self-esteem is so low because people have beat up on you and you haven't found a way to support yourself emotionally, then you're in need of definitely finding some support. And I hope that you have it in you to look for that. Find things that are interesting to you to do, whether it's reading, riding a bike, bowling, if you're into public speaking, writing, whatever it is, find things that are interesting to you so that you can begin to build your self-esteem, so that you can be happy with the way you are and continue to build on that. I remember a kid when I was in school, this kind of goes back to my rescuer days, who I used to watch him get picked on just because he was a little bit different. And I don't mean different in a bad way. He just wore different kinds of clothes. His parents didn't have a lot of money, but it was nothing bad about him as an individual. He was just sort of quiet. And, I'm not going to mention names because it's not, but this is a true story. I sort of befriended the kid because I just thought he was a nice person, because that for me was my litmus test for people. If they were nice people, and my mother was really a nice and very loving individual, so she learned to embrace everybody, and that was my example of wanting to love people for who they are. And I found this kid, I remember being second or third grade. He was really one of the nicest people, and we went over to his house. His mom was there, and she felt it was so great of him that he had a nice kid that wanted to come over, and we did what kids do. You play with army men, and you had these little other little toys and stuff that you play with, and trucks and cars. That's what boys do, and just good stuff, just good clean fun. And at that time, I knew that he was a nice person, and I'm not sure, because I haven't seen him for years and years, and we're talking third grade back then. But I don't know what his life is like today. But what I do know is after he and I started to hang out at school, he was, you could see him start to come alive. And it was just validating him for who he was, that he was a nice person. And I can remember him answering questions in class now because he had a little more confidence to do so. I mean, the kid was obviously smart. He was a bright kid. But because he was picked on a little bit, he didn't have the confidence. And, I remember another kid when I was in fifth grade who was, I used to call him an egghead. And by that, I mean that he was a really, really bright kid. And that's not always the most fun person to be around when you're, third, fourth, fifth grade, because one of the ways in which you sort of judge people, at least when you're boys, is, how athletic are they? Well, neither one of these guys were very athletic. That just wasn't their thing. but they were bright. They were really into, they could do the math problems and stuff like that. And that's obviously what teachers like. They were, and what I'm establishing, they were good the way they are. But because other people didn't accept them, they were a little beat down and they were really quiet. Now, I can imagine both of those individuals nowadays being, since they've grown up, being very responsible, very accomplished individuals. And what I'm getting back to is, if you're one of those people who was picked on, who was made to feel small, who was bullied and didn't get any support, well, obviously you're going to need to find something that you're passionate about, something that you're interested in, to do, to learn, to build your self-esteem, be good at it, and share that with people, because that is where you sort of get the return. That's not just you looking in the mirror, but that's the world then beginning to reflect back to you some of your value, some of what you've invested in. And artistic people often will do this, is they will learn a skill. Maybe they learn to draw or have some sort of musical inclination. And maybe if it's just something you do as part of a meditative thing, that's great. But what I'm talking about are those individuals that are struggling a little bit with feeling like they don't know their value. Share who you are. Be vulnerable in that sense. I mean, that's kind of asking you to be vulnerable again, because at one time you were vulnerable and people beat you up. But now I'm taking a different direction, which is to say, when you're being vulnerable in this other way, then as you get older, there are other people out there that can relate to your gift. And I want to say it like that, because then as you share that, then it gets mirrored back to you in various other ways. Then you probably get to see another person and their gift and their ability to do things, and see that magnify itself. It's a beautiful thing when it happens, and believe me, it's out there. One of the things that I've learned to do, as I was self-taught to learn to play the piano, and I've played in various bands and groups and have some vocal talent and things, and a lot of people didn't know I had that ability. I sort of kept it around my musician friends, and that was the kind of cool thing for me. I didn't want people to know I had some of these talents, because for that it was just like I had I had something that I could do that I knew that they couldn't do. But given the right circumstance, then I would share it. And this is kind of what I'm saying. So I was vulnerable at the right time, and it worked. And it propelled me, it supported me in doing other really wonderful, fun things. And to my estimation, and I've had a very good life. And in fact, because of those other things, it's actually allowed me to do these podcasts. I had the confidence and the comfort to be in a room like I am right now, speaking into a microphone to all my listeners. And obviously I want to thank you for being there. But it's those kinds of things. It's a way of public speaking, which I'm very comfortable with doing, and I enjoy it. And the purpose of enjoying it is because I feel like I have something to share, something that of value. And it's not just getting in front of a bunch of people and just hearing myself speak, but I try to talk about something that I think is really helpful to people. And if I don't have that to share, then I'm content with being quiet and listening to someone else really share something of value, something that they're passionate about. So remember, being just the way you are is okay. I'm going to take another short break, and I'll be right back.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast, dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
And we're back. Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. I'm your host, John Johnson. Living life to the fullest, just the way you are. As I had shared that one of the things that I've been able to do is enjoy the fact that I've had various talents and have been able to share them with people, being vulnerable at the right time, and coming out of my own little shell. Because for the longest, I didn't share a lot of my talents because, well, I just didn't feel comfortable doing that. But by the same token, it took me coming out of my shell to learn to be comfortable with just the way that I was. And relationships, which is what this podcast is about, give you ample opportunities to experience this. And I'm hoping that for you, that you are in a relationship where you have that opportunity. It's whether it's romantic or a friendship or something, or some sort of group of people that come together and validate each other's bucket list, whatever it is. I hope you get that, because remember that you are good just the way you are, and when you feel comfortable with who you are, then you seem willing and open to take on more things, to learn, to expand your world, and to be accepting of others. And that's a beautiful thing as well. And I've had the pleasure of doing that many, many times over. And I try to encourage people to find, again, I'm going to say this because I'm going to say it's passion. Find something that you're passionate about, because that's what gives you juice. That's what gets you over the humps in life. And when you do that, you're able to take care of yourself. And then you look and you find people who are like you, and you then become a beacon of inspiration for the same reasons that you found support. And that's how life works. It's kind of like paying it forward. There was a movie that had that sort of theme in it. I don't recall it at the moment. Probably have to go to one of the movie guys that does their podcast here and ask them what the name of that movie was. But Sixth Sense, something like that. No, Pay It Forward. Maybe that was the name of the movie. Years ago. It's a great movie. M. Night Shyamalan, I think that was the writer of that. Anyway, don't know how I got off on that tangent. But just the same, just the way you are. Remember, you're valuable. You're a beautiful person. Don't let somebody rob you of your power, your passion, your capacity to do good and wonderful things. And when you do find that you're feeling a little low, one of the things that I go back to is journals and things that I've written, which I chronicle my journey from time to time. And when I could see what I've come through, either something I've written or maybe pictures I've taken. And that's the wonderful thing about having the technology, the media now. You can take selfies and you can remind yourself of some of the play. And I encourage people, take pictures of your journey. And it helps remind you of what you've done with your time. That's a beautiful thing. And to be able to share that. Think about that. I'm John Johnson. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. And I want to thank you for listening.